Okay, so we are back. So we're going to get ourselves kind of the beginnings here of chapter 15. So we're going to look at starting with Indian culture on the subcontinent. So primarily looking at India, Pakistan, or what is now India and Pakistan, but primarily defining what we call Indian civilization. So on that Indian subcontinent, and this is going to it says up here 1500 BCE to 300 CE. We're obviously covering from before then a little bit, not a whole lot, but also going into other things. And so this first video is really just going to talk about not really Indian civilization, but more about just the Hindu religion and cultural stuff. And then the next videos will kind of play more into actual Hindu society beyond the religious aspect. So this is going to kind of, again, like we've done with, you know, with China and with Islam, just laying the foundations, and then we'll expand more onto the economy, the empires, the rest of the subcontinent beyond that. So that's just kind of what we're doing with this first video, is just talking about Hinduism itself. And I thought that was going to split differently. Okay, so Hinduism itself, as you can see, wide variety of beliefs and practices that have developed on the Indian subcontinent since antiquity, which means just for a long time of history, talking about thousands of years here. So the foundation of Hinduism comes from the Vedic religion of the Arya peoples of northern India. So if you took AP Human Geography and you remember the term the Aryan, um, language, or and I can't remember the rest of that, but it's one of the major groups, and so kind of people that moved into that Ganges River, the Ganges River Valley, several thousands of years ago, kind of brought that with them into the region. All right. So talking about worshiping, or emphasize worshippers' personal devotion to a particular deity, and we'll talk more about that. Um, Becoming kind of the main symbol of Hinduism. So the Ganges River in India is very sacred, and each year people make pilgrimages, much of what we talked about making pilgrimages to other holy sites, to statues, to Mecca in Islam, to areas of the Buddhist life within Buddhism. Pilgrimages continue to happen within Hinduism, primarily, or one big location is the Ganges River, to bathe in its waters and receive considered to be restorative and purifying power. Obviously, also having other sources such as providing water and power along the river itself. Um, and then, worshiping with the puja, which takes the form of bathing, clothing, or feeding a statue of the deity, because it's supposed to represent the deity's life on earth, or a representation of it. So, here is the considered the Indian subcontinent and ancient India. Again, this only, if we're looking at this map, we're not really talking really beyond this. So Indian culture kind of, gets contained within kind of this era here, but also within the subcontinent, going further down into southern India, and then also a little bit into Sri Lanka. All right, and this sets the stage because honestly, we do come back and talk about within this chapter the Indian subcontinent, which then sets up Indian Ocean maritime trade routes, which become really, really big in terms of talking about Portuguese and Dutch trading, kind of prior to and also around the same time that we talk about Columbus and the other Europeans heading west into the Americas. So again, this really sets the stage for those things in between, but also again giving us a really big background into India, and it's also connections to Islam too. So we're going to see a lot of that come up in this chapter as well. All right, so the origins, as we said, there's no one clear founder. Okay, we talk about it coming from the Aryan people, and there's not a whole lot of clear definitions about any one specific founder in terms of developing the religion. It just kind of came from that background stuff, and then became established as Hinduism over time. All right, so again, depending on where you live in India, might depend on which of those main deities or deity that you believe in. So in some cases, Hinduism is considered a polytheistic religion. In some cases, it's more monotheistic. Again, based on who you believe in and how you interpret that. For some people, they might just believe in one of those major deities. Others, it's believing in numerous of them and praying towards one, and then that deity might have, lesser gods or sub gods kind of within that, or they might be part of the same god. It can be very, very complex, and so I am not at all calling myself an expert on Hinduism. And again, this is just again scratching the surface. So if you have more curious intellects on this, definitely feel free to do your own research on it. The book definitely does not do it justice, and again, doesn't really focus on Hinduism as much of a religion. Time to talk more about the social stuff, which we'll come up to here in a sec. So Hindu beliefs vary from place to place. We talk about, again, those pilgrimages, where you're worshiping. Again, oftentimes it will depend on where you were born and what area of India you lived in. Okay. So the main goal within Hinduism We talk about emphasizing that worshippers' devotion to a particular deity, and the whole point of it is to eventually unite their soul with the Brahman or divine force, and this is kind of where the gods are. And this kind of sets the stage for the Hindu caste system and the ideas in terms of reincarnation. So Hinduism helps to form social classes. So there's a difference between this Brahmin here and this Brahmin caste system. So the Brahmin thing with the unification of the soul is up here with the gods. Like that is the highest stage you can get to. So kind of like we talked about with Buddhism in terms of the idea of salvation, is this is where you want to achieve or just get right below that, right? And that takes a very, very long time. So the idea of reincarnation, just like we talked about a little bit with Buddhism, comes initially from the idea of Hinduism. You got to remember that Siddhartha Gautama, known as the Buddha, the enlightened one, was raised in northern India and so had possibly very Hinduistic backgrounds and beliefs, and kind of carries that with him going forward in his life. And so within India, and this is kind of something that has persisted for again thousands of years, is this caste system based on where you were born and where you can get reincarnated to. All right. So people are born into these various different groups. If your parents are priests or academics or gods, emperors, people in charge of government, you're up here, okay, in these first two locations. Okay, then the merchants and the landowners, and then that bottom group here, commoners, peasants, servants, laborers, things like that. And then you got the people that are considered the untouchables, which is still sort of, and this persists. This is a continuity throughout Indian history. Are the untouchables, people who are considered outside the caste system, people who literally work with feces. Okay, street sweepers, latrine cleaners. They have the worst jobs, and you can't within Hindu society move out of your caste. You can't marry out of it like within Buddhism or within Islam. You are stuck in this system, and only based on your good or bad deeds are going to determine whether or not you stay in that caste in the next life, or if you move up or down that ladder. All right, and the goal is to continually move up into this, where you eventually combine your soul. All right, so this is the idea where we talk about the reincarnation and where that comes in. So when you die, your soul is reborn into a different body. All right, and these comes up with these two terms here known as dharma and karma. So dharma is the duties and obligations based on the social class you are born into. So we pull up this again here, all right, with our little triangle here of the social class structure within India. All right, and so, all right, if you are a merchant or a landowner, you have certain duties that you have to do in order to be considered fulfilling your dharma. Same thing with you or a warrior or king. If you're doing your duties correctly, you get rewarded in this life either by staying in that same social class in the next life, or moving up if you do really, really well, or moving down. All right, which means that you have to be very, very good to continue to move up where there's fewer and fewer people in these other classes. All right, so if you do well in one life, you can get rewarded in the next life in terms of being a part of these positions. Okay, so karma is the result of a person's actions. All right, so what you do in this life will come back and result in what happens to you in the next life. So that's why we say what goes around comes around. That's the idea of karma based on, do you fulfill your obligations within your dharma? Okay, if you do, that's kind of the thing. So the idea again is to merge your soul with the Brahman and no longer be a part of reincarnation. So to move up here and never be a part of this again, which means that your soul has been part of that and you've actually achieved salvation. So there's an idea here that your life can get better and you can continually move up and up and up until your soul becomes one with the Brahman. All right. And so this has long-lasting problems within India or within Indian society, because for so long you see this defining people's, actions, are not necessarily their actions, but defining the way in which people interact and treat one another. All right. And so while it might lay out duties and obligations, much in the same way that we talk about, Islam laying that out within, the Quran, or within Buddhism, or not Buddhism, within China, talking about, the idea of Confucianism and, obligations and loyalty and things like that. That gets laid out here too, but you also see a lot of try not to associate with these other groups when you do not have to. So if you are a Brahmin or one of the warriors or kings, you're not going to try and interact with these lower classes at all, and you are going to treat them as such. And the people down here, the untouchables, you try and literally stay away from them 100% of the time. And so that leads to a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of mistreatment of these lower classes and outside the caste system within that. And so this kind of lays that foundation for when we talk about other people trying to come in and trying to change that system, i.e. within Islam to an extent, and then the Europeans later on, and even to modern day within India, even though the caste system is outlawed, you still see the ramifications within this where in many cases these are still the main people kind of in those bottom structures, but still being mistreated and not given a fair shot, and there's no equity there. And many people in those upper classes, no longer within castes, but even though they might still exist to an extent, not wanting to give a fair shot and wanting to keep their upper class status. And so you see that consistently within Indian culture for a very, very long period. All right. So again, the big things here that we really wanted to cover were just kind of the backgrounds of Hinduism, the way in which karma and dharma work within reincarnation, within the Hindu belief systems. All right, tying that into the fact that you do in fact have, where are we at? Temples, visits, places for pilgrims and mission or people to go on missions, and things like that. Within the Hindu system, I should have gotten a picture of people bathing in the Ganges River. I don't have that, but that's okay. And again, tying that into the land, into architecture. So there is that effect too. But again, also really coming back down to the social class, and even to an extent, you talk about social class, but also the economics here as well. Who are your wealthy, who are your poor? Can you move up? Not really, because based on all this, yes, you might be wealthier, but that doesn't mean you're going to be able to move up into these systems, and you're still going to get looked down on if you're not a part of it. And so that kind of sets the foundations for what we're going to talk about in the next few lessons when we talk about, more of the structure within India and then the arrival within Islam. All right, we'll also talk more about the economy and trade within those next few videos too. So hopefully you found that interesting and enlightening. If you did not, or if you have questions, let me know. All right, and again, this is just scratching the surface. So you can always find more resources online as well. So that's where we're going to stop, and then we'll continue on with the beginnings of the chapter in the next one.